Hi guys, Buildzoid here, and today we're going to be doing another sliding car video because I just want to sort of share my plans for Z490 in this video. So if if you want to be surprised at the kind of content I bring out, then don't watch this. If you want to know what's coming, what I'm going to be doing in terms of Z490 coverage, then do watch this. So, first up, in terms of motherboards, for Z490, like right now, I already have the Gigabyte Aorus Extreme, and I also have the Gigabyte Z490 Aorus Master. I also requested the Z490 ITX Ultra from Gigabyte, because that thing looks like an absolute beast of an ITX motherboard. Like, that thing looks super awesome. I'm really excited for that. And then I also requested an Ultra G2 edition, because it's the only motherboard that I think... It's one of the few motherboards that has actual color to it instead of just being gray with RGB. So, yeah. And at the same time, the Ultra, like... The thing is, the Ultra, I think, is kind of the motherboard that sort of replaces the Z490 Master, in a way. I feel like since Z490, basically the Master's been shifted up a tier in terms of, like, build quality and cost. Definitely cost, and actually, yeah, even build quality. Like, if you compare the current Master to the old Master, it's a huge difference. Like, yeah, so because of that, I feel like the Ultra is kind of the board that, you know, replaces the old Z490 Master at the, I actually don't know what price point they're targeting with it yet, but, how the hell did that happen? Anyway, but yeah, so, you know, I want to test the Ultra because that looks like a really solid, sort of not ridiculously expensive motherboard for Z490. Though Z490 as a whole is just a very expensive platform. But you kind of have to, I feel like Z490 is in this weird situation, kind of like AM3 Plus was, where it's like, if you wanted an FX8 core, you couldn't go for a low-end, like, and you wanted to, you know, get the most out of your FX8 core, you really needed to buy, like, a top-end 990FX board, because the lower-end boards, like, they would overheat, they would have all kinds of issues. It was not a pleasant experience on the lower-end AM3 Plus boards. And Z490 is kind of like that, where it's like, okay, so the 10-core... Like, Intel has apparently, you know, fixed up some of the thermals on these CPUs by sanding down the CPU dies, and that basically means it's going to be a lot easier to cool the CPU even at stupid amounts of power, like heat output, which basically means you can, it's going to put more load on the VRM of the motherboard. So, especially if you're getting, like, a 10900K, you know, like, Right, well, I think it's also, I'm just biased, I want to test nice boards instead of low-end boards. Like, that's a very real problem where it's like, now that I don't have to buy motherboards, it's kind of like, I don't really want to test the, like, more reasonably priced ones. They're not that interesting anymore. So, like, basically by that I mean the Z490 Aorus Pro from Gigabyte, right? So, yeah, that's one thing I'm not sure about. Like, because there's also the issue, I don't really want to have a stack of, like, 6 or 7 motherboards to test. Which, from one vendor, right? Like, which Gigabyte's kind of unique in that sense that that is actually very possible for me to have 6 boards just from Gigabyte. And I'd really like to avoid that. So I'm thinking, like, honestly, even 4 boards from Gigabyte just feels like, because that's currently what I'm going to end up with, right? Where it's like, I'll have an ITX, I have the Aorus Extreme, I have the Master, and then I may or may not also have an Ultra. That's 4 motherboards. And I'm thinking, like, okay, so I want to do some memory overclocking on each of them. I want to do, you know, I'm not sure that, well, if I have a 10900K, I guess we can do some VRM thermal testing. Though, the thing is, yeah, I guess I'll do some half-assed VRM thermal testing. I don't really, like, the thing is just, like, I'm pretty sure none of the boards Gigabyte is putting out for Z490 are going to have VRM thermal issues. So it's just like, or at least none of the ones that I'm going to be requesting, you know, are going to have thermal issues. So it's just like, I don't really want to deal with the whole putting the motherboard in the case and then dealing with all that. Well, actually, it's not that time intensive to do. I don't know. I'll have to make up my mind, but yeah. But definitely it's like, so I'd like to do some memory overclocking per motherboard. I really want to do oscilloscope measurements on a lot of Z490 boards because Gigabyte is doing some, like, they've really, you know, made some pretty major adjustments to their VRM to try and improve the transient response, which is basically a result of that trip that I had to Taiwan last year. I'll talk about that more in the PCB breakdowns for the Z490 Gigabyte boards. Yeah, because of that, so I definitely want to do scope shots for a bunch of the Z490 Gigabyte boards, and actually just generally every Z490 board I get. But the thing is like, I don't really feel like I don't want to have 6 boards because, you know, with the low-end ones, like, and I get that most people, at the same time, I feel like if you're going to be considering a 10600K, why don't you just buy like a 3600 instead? Right? Like, I don't know. Well, the 10600K should actually, like, that's like an 8700K now. That should be a really, like, that should be a pretty strong CPU. At the same time, an Intel 6-core can pull a surprising amount of power if you push it. And if you're not going to overclock it, then yeah, sure, buy whatever. You know, as usual, if you're running at stock, you don't have to worry about VRM thermals. Or if you just have a very low core count CPU, you don't have to worry about VRM thermals. But a 6-core for Intel, like, the thing is, an Intel 6-core is still 14 nanometers, so the power efficiency hasn't really changed, it's just, it clocks higher. As in, the amount of power the CPU pulls relative to the voltage it runs at hasn't changed. The frequency it can reach at the same level of voltage is going up every, you know, with every generation. That's kind of what all the pluses at the end of 14 nanometer are for, is like, oh, we can clock higher at the same volts, not lower volts. Or, well, same clock at lower volts or a higher clock at the same volts, right? That's basically what the process changed. Man, I have a really hard time with these, like, long sweeper turns. Like, sometimes I nail them, and sometimes I just ride the outer, like, ride the wall, and then it's screwed up. Anyway, so, yeah, I guess it really depends how competitive the 10600K is, if the lower-end boards make sense. At the same time, like, I really don't want to have so many boards to test. Well, I guess I won't be testing any Asrock boards. Well, so with Asrock, I'm kind of considering maybe testing a Z490 Extreme4, just to see, because I tested the Z490 Extreme4, and that thing's VRM was like, okay, it doesn't run that, like, the VRM on the Z490 Extreme4, like, thermally, relatively okay. Voltage regulation-wise, absolute disaster. Like, literally like 200 or 300 megahertz worse core clocks than any other motherboard, even at appropriate LLC settings. Which is just like, yeah, that is not okay. Okay, like that level of VRM performance is just not okay. So that's why I am definitely going to be doing oscilloscope shots for all the Z490 boards. I'm definitely going to be building a probinator, probably out of a 10900K, which that's not going to be, well, yeah. The thing with doing, like, the thing with the probinator, like, on AM4, I've been trying to do the scope shots by, like, just measuring off of the motherboard, and the thing is just, it is such a pain to be constantly soldering, you know, probe hookup points to motherboards. Like, it just sucks so much to do that. Especially because, like, I've broken two like, well, like, I've made mistakes doing it on, actually, no, I think I broke all 3 of the MSI motherboards in different ways when, you know, hooking up DiSense readings to them for the oscilloscope shots. So it's just like, yeah, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm just going to run coax directly to the CPU. That works great. And I'm just like, the only reason I can't do that on AMD is because AMD CPUs are terrifying to delid. Oh, got it. So, yeah, I do want to do scope shots. So for Gigabyte, basically, unless there's a comment where somebody's like, I really want to see, you know, the Pro reviewed or some of the lower end boards reviewed, I'm only really interested in testing the... Like, the thing is, they just kind of sent me the Extreme, but at the same time, I am actually really, really excited to get to test an Extreme. Like, that is a board where, like, and the thing is, it's such an expensive board, but... I don't know, like, the problem is like, the high-end boards are where the manufacturers can kind of go and do, you know, whatever the hell they feel like in terms of design. And the Extreme is just doing some really cool stuff. It's similar to how, like, MSI, though MSI is doing that on their entire lineup, but, like, the board where it works best is the Godlike, right? Where, with the tabbed memory traces, like, they're doing that on every single motherboard in their lineup. It's just that the Godlike is the only motherboard, along with the ITX, where they're like, yeah, if you have 2 DIMMs, you can run, you know, 5,000 mega transfers memory speed. And it's just like, oh, fun fact, even G-Skill's own website lists their memory kits as 4,000 megahertz, like, or 4,800 megahertz. Like, nobody, like, I think Crucial is the only RAM vendor that actually uses mega transfers. Everybody else uses megahertz, which I know it's wrong. Like, technically speaking, you're supposed to use mega transfers, but nobody does that. So I'm just going to keep calling it megahertz and screw the like, you know, if you're commenting with, oh, you mean mega transfers, not megahertz, right? Like, that, like, deal with it, you know? Anyway, so... You know, so it's like, the Godlike's really, really cool because, like, it's this crazy, like, it has all the crazy overclocking stuff. And speaking of MSI, so I've requested a Godlike. I'm not sure if I'm going to get one. I really, like, it'd be so cool if I did, but, yeah. I requested one, I don't know if I'll get one. Mostly because I want to just see how it does in terms of memory overclocking. Like, 5,000 megahertz is big claims. Right, and then I've also requested, so they're going to send me a Unify. They've straight up, like, before launch, they were like, yeah, we're going to send you a Z490 Unify, so I'm just kind of waiting for that to turn up. And then I also asked about testing the Z490 ITX Unify, because that thing, it looks like it's going to be an absolute memory overclocking monster as well. So for MSI, that's going to be, like, if I get my way, I'm going to be testing a Z490... Godlike, Unify, and ITX Unify. And again, I don't really feel like I don't know. It's like, I looked through the, like, you know, MSI sent me a bunch of information on their Z490 lineup, and I looked through the boards, and it's just like... Like, I'm not excited about the low-end boards. They're not exciting. That's the whole issue. Right? Which, and at the same time, because, like, Z490 to me seems like a platform that you buy for the 10900K. Man, I really screwed that up. I really screwed that up. Okay, anyway. But yeah, like, Z490 to me seems like, oh, it's, you buy a 10900K or you buy Ryzen anyway. That kind of seems like that to me, so... Yeah, I'm not super excited at, like, the more cost-effective motherboard options on the platform, if that makes sense. Oh, come on, come on, come on, stay in it! Well, that wasn't very clean, but it works. Anyway, yeah. Like, the thing is, I don't even remember any of the, like, the lower-end product names for MSI. I know they have a Gaming Pro Carbon again, but that's just because that's, like, the carbon, like, the only carbon motherboard, right? So, yeah, and there's the Ace, but the Unify looks really, like, the Unify looks great. So I'm, like, excited for that board. And actually, I think that's going to be probably competing with Gigabyte's Ultra. Or, like, it depends on the pricing. So, anyway, so that's kind of MSI, unless somebody has a special request where it's like, oh, I want you to test some more, you know, budget option from some of the manufacturers. Like, that's what I'm interested in from MSI. From Asus, I'm buying an Apex. The Maximus 12 Apex, I'm buying one of those. Like, that's not, like, I can't request, like, I don't have a wait to ask Asus for samples, so I was just like, yeah, I'm buying an Apex. Because I'm really quite annoyed that I didn't get to do oscilloscope testing on the Maximus 11 Apex. So I really want to do that for the Maximus 12. Because that thing looks like, I'm really interested in just how that board behaves. Also, Asus is doing some pretty like they have some small interesting details in terms of the power delivery that I'm really interested to see if that actually translates into anything on the oscilloscope shots. So yeah, anyway, other than that, there's also the Z490G, the MATX Strix board. That looks interesting to me, mostly because it looks like we finally have like an MATX, like it looks like Asus has brought back an MATX motherboard that doesn't suck for once, right? Like MATX has been this really neglected form factor for a very long time, and the reasoning for it is very simple from the motherboard vendors. It just doesn't sell very much, so, you know, they're not bothered making good MATX motherboards because MATX just doesn't have the volume of ATX, so that's why, like, So a good MATX motherboard is really quite a rarity, and because of that, yeah, I'm interested in testing the Z490G from Asus. But that I'll probably be buying really late because, again, I have to buy that one. So it's like I have to buy a 10900K, I have to buy the Apex. What else is there? Yeah, that's kind of that for now. Oh, and then I'd have to buy the G if I want to test it. Because the thing is, I want to test the G because I assume it has the exact same VRM as some of the ATX options from Asus. So it's like, if I test that board, it should reflect a lot, like, it should, you know, give a really good indication of how the rest of Asus's lineup performs. Because normally the way MATX, like, well, a lot of MATX boards are basically ATX boards where they chopped off the bottom 3 PCIe slots. Like, 3, you know, where they chopped off the bottom, essentially, there. So, that's kind of that. And then for Asrock, the Phantom Gaming Velocita board, or whatever stupid name they came up for it, but, like, the Phantom Gaming board, that one looks kind of interesting, because it looks like Asrock is making it, like, they didn't bother with having 2 PCIe slots connected directly to the CPU on that one. So it should be really cheap because they don't have an SLI, like, or more like not really cheap. I expect it to be really, like, aggressively priced because they don't have an SLI license, which, you know, takes down the manufacturing cost. Like, that takes down the cost of the board. There's no SLI license. There's no PCIe, you know, Gen 4 switches on that motherboard because you're not going to be switching from that primary slot anyway. So, you know, like, that's really cool. So yeah, I think, well, it's not really cool, but it's like, that should really make that board very, you know, cost-effective in a way, because it's just like, yeah, like, if you don't have to run PCIe Gen 4 that far, that should massively improve, that should significantly lower the cost, right? Because the thing is with PCIe Gen 4, it's like, if you only have one PCIe Gen 4 slot, then it's not really that big a deal. But if you have 2 slots, then now you need a bunch of Gen 4 switches and repeaters. And, you know, that's obviously a lot, like, that's potentially a lot more cost than just having an extra, like, just going straight from the CPU to a PCIe slot, that's fine. Going from the CPU, and also you'll notice that 16X slot on the Phantom Gaming board from Asrock, that slot is all the way up against the CPU socket. Like, it is as high up the motherboard as it can be for a PCIe slot, which again just looks like they were really trying to minimize the amount of work necessary to get Gen 4 working on that board, because it's just like, yeah, the slot is closer to the CPU, they're not switching it into any other slots or anything as far as I can tell, There's no SLI license on that motherboard, and yet it has a very similar sort of, like, from an overclocking perspective, for its single GPU application, it looks very similar to the Tai Chi. So that's why I'm interested in that board, because it's like, that should be, you know, interesting from a cost-effectiveness perspective, where it's just like, you know, I feel like they shaved off quite a bit of, you know, things that would drive up the cost of the board, and that makes it interesting to test. The ITX from Asrock, I'm not sure. Overall, I like the Z490 ITX Phantom Gaming. I guess it depends how they price the Z490 ITX, the Phantom Gaming one. Not Asrock has 2 ITX boards. One of them is like super cost optimized, and that one just looks like I wouldn't put a 10 core anywhere near it. So, you know, it's just like, yeah, no, I'm not going to test that one. But the Phantom Gaming ITX with the little fan on the VRM, that looks interesting. So, yeah, that's kind of all I wanted to say. So, in summary, right, for Gigabyte, unless somebody says they really want to see a specific board, I'm going to be doing, well, I'm definitely the boards I'm interested in from Gigabyte are the Aorus Extreme, the Aorus Master, the Ultra, and the ITX Ultra. And I do actually have the Extreme and the Master already. I expect to get the ITX, and honestly also the Ultra should be no problem for me to get as well. Then from MSI, I'm interested in the Godlike, the Unify, and the ITX Unify. It's really funny how that works. Like, the naming schemes are working out where it's like, so from Gigabyte, I like the, you know, Extreme, Master, Ultra, ITX Ultra. And from MSI, I like the Godlike, the Unify, and the ITX Unify. Just a funny, to me, it's kind of funny that, like, the names line up across both of them, where it's like, yeah, those are the boards I'm interested in. Where both the ITX and the ATX board, like, share the naming. Anyway, for Asus, I'm interested in the Apex and the Z490G, and I have to buy those. Or at least I assume I have to buy those, unless Asus suddenly decides to, you know, send me an email and go like, hey, we'd love to work with you after you've, you know, trashed our Z490 motherboards and can't stop talking about it. And then there's the, and then from Asrock, I'm just kind of interested in the Phantom Gaming Velocita, or like that board, and also the Extreme4. Like, I'm kind of interested in the Extreme4. So if the Extreme4 is not that expensive, I'll probably test it. Just because I'm interested in, like, I don't know, that looks like it could be a really strong, cost-effective option. I'd be lying if I didn't, if I said that I wasn't also just kind of into the whole sort of color scheme they have with it. Like, I think that's a pretty good-looking board. And yeah, that's kind of that's the boards I'm interested in for Z490 essentially. Yeah, that's it for this video. Whoa, this is only 23 minutes. That is good. I'm very happy with that. I was really worried this would end up being 40 minutes. So before it becomes that, let's just end it here. So thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, leave any comments, questions, suggestions down in the comment section below. Especially, definitely, if there's a motherboard you are interested in, you have to tell me, because unless it's on my list of boards I'm interested in, it's not going to be covered, because I've just kind of, yeah, it's just, you know, there's one Buildzoid, and unfortunately said Buildzoid is not the world's most productive reviewer. So yeah, if there's a board you want to see, you're going to have to, you're A, going to have to request it, B, hope that somebody else, enough people have to request it at the same time to change my mind about not covering it. So, by that, don't make bot accounts, okay? Now that I said that, somebody's going to make, 6 accounts so they can all request the same board when it's one person. There's going to be some trash, low-end motherboard that I'm definitely never, it doesn't matter how many people request it, I'm not going to cover it. Anyway, so yeah, definitely leave comments, you know, motherboard requests for Z490, leave them in the comment section. And what else was there? If you'd like to support what I do here with actually hardcore overclocking, I have a Patreon and the AHOC Teespring store. So Patreon, you can support me directly, which is how I'm going to be able to buy that Maximus 12 Apex and the G and the Asrock boards and, you know, all of that, as well as the 10900K. Or there's the Teespring store, which, you know, you can buy shirts, stickers, posters, and that achieves the exact same thing as the Patreon, except you get a shirt or a sticker or whatever it is that you bought off of the Teespring store, right? Like, it's a freaking merch store. You know how this works. So, yeah, that's it for the video. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.